We all remember that Democratic member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives in the 182nd District, Brian Sims, LGBTQ activist, state representative, civil rights attorney, college football captain, serial harasser of his constituents, and would-be doxer of underage females, right? I do.
Process begin.
Following the incident with Brian Sims that went viral on the interwebs, I'm sure you've all seen it, pro-life activists decided to flock to the Planned Parenthood in question that Brian Sims had taken upon himself to defend, rallying in support of anti-abortion initiatives. The irony of what transpired in this situation always gives me a good chuckle, you know? But, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Sims is by no means the only politically minded member of the United States population to make such a colossal error in his judgment. Oh no. Allow me to provide you with yet more mockable materials. Senate Bill 23, also referred to as Ohio's Heartbeat Bill, passed through both the state Senate and House and was signed into law by Ohio Governor Mike DeWine on April 11th, 2019. This bill prevented the abortion of a fetus the moment a heartbeat could be detected, which can occur as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy. What I bet you didn't hear about, however, and what I was rather surprised to learn, was that before this could happen, there was a Democratic state representative from Ohio named Janine Boyd who had proposed Amendment 0291. What is Amendment 0291, you might be asking? Well, let me tell you. Amendment 0291 states explicitly and simply that African American women shall be exempt from the requirements in sections 2919.192 to 2919.196 of the Revised Code. What this is essentially stating is that while everyone else is mandated to keep from aborting their children after a heartbeat is detected, black women can just go right ahead and abort all of their children for any reason up until 20 weeks. Genius, I know. It's as if implying that there were systemic precedent in place discriminating amongst the races weren't enough. We have to go ahead and actually implement it into the system. Brilliant. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey signed Bill 25-6, or the Alabama Human Life Protection Act, into law on May 15th of 2019, which restricts abortion in all cases, save for 1, to avoid serious health risk to the unborn child's mother, 2, in cases of ectopic pregnancy, and 3, if the unborn child has a lethal anomaly. In retaliation for this law, LA County, all the way over here in California, has imposed a 1-year travel ban to Alabama. Now you may be thinking, what the heck is this going to do to make a difference in any case? Well, I'll tell you. The ban itself prohibits official travel by county employees to the red state, but allows exceptions for emergency response training or assistance, or other legally required matters where the failure to authorize such travel would seriously harm any county's interest. Thank you for clearing that up, LA County. Exactly how this travel ban of county employees is intended to make a lick of difference to the Alabama legislature, when later on in the same article it states that California as a state already bans travel to Alabama along with 9 other red states over other legislative practices. So let me get this straight. Your big brain partisan driven idea to get Republicans to fall in line revolves on a travel ban, a restriction on the freedom of movement of the people, putting an imaginary wall, if you will. I find it rather odd. Funny even, that this issue that we were having here today comes down to a pro-choice versus a pro-life argument, when one of the main issues, the contentions that I'm going to bring up to you, addressed here in this video, is with respect to a doctor's right to choose to refuse to perform abortions. Refusal of the doctor. Right to choose to refuse to perform abortions. Let's just emphasize that point right there. For reference, see House Bill 2452, page 51, section 3, quote, healthcare providers may not be prohibited from participating in the Medicare for America for reasons other than their ability to provide covered services. Healthcare providers and institutions are prohibited from denying covered individuals access to covered benefits and services because of their religious objections. This subsection supersedes any provision of law that allows for conscience protection. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It supersedes conscience protections. Moving on. In the next round of tomfoolery we're going to look at is with regards to Alyssa Milano. Yes, I know everyone and their mother has already addressed the foolishness of calling for a sex strike in an effort to counter anti-abortion legislation, but I haven't yet, so we're going to. Not only was the backlash from other women palpable, but ironically, the very conservative values on reproduction that Alyssa sought to combat were actually something that she was in fact championing in that of abstinence. And therein lies the irony. Frankly, if you were to ask me, and you're not, but I'm going to tell you anyway, I think that the best way to combat abortion in the United States lies not in legislation of abortion, rather in easier access to contraceptives for people, revamping our foster care and adoption system to make it more accessible and easier to manage across the board for, our family systems, and the big one, teaching safe sex education to people en masse. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard stories of ignorance from people my age and above who have kids. Just, it's scary what people don't know. That is how you fight abortions. Conservatives, that is how you fight them. Liberals, by working together to come to a happy middle ground that involves a solution that we can all be equally pissed and happy about together. Alright? But yes, Alyssa, abstaining from sex certainly is one of those foolproof ways to prevent yourself from coming to task with the nasty realities of abortion legislation in the United States of America. Congratulations. In other news, May 7th, 2019, Governor Brian Kemp signed a bill into law that would ban abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected, including some exceptions such as if the pregnancy risks the life of the mother or poses substantial or irreversible physical harm to the pregnant woman. In an effort to counter this legislation measure, Georgia Representative Darshun Kendrick introduced the Testicular Bill of Rights. Well, what is this Testicular Bill of Rights, you might be asking? It's a doozy. That's what it is. It is a ban on the vasectomy procedures performed for men in order to prevent them from, how does one say, reproducing in that sense. A requirement also that men must obtain permission from their sexual partners to obtain Viagra. You know, the little blue pill that you're supposed to call your doctor after 4 hours for? Yes. And a measure included in this bill to make it an aggravated assault crime for a man to have sex without a condom. Now, this may seem like it is too ridiculous a legislation to pass in the great state of Georgia, but this is the same state that banned an ice cream cone in one's back pocket if it's a Sunday, and also made it illegal for donkeys to be kept in bathtubs. So, I wouldn't put it past them, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not even kidding. You can look into both of those. It is on the books. As if it weren't enough, however, Netflix of all people also decided to weigh in on this nonsense. I'm sure you didn't know this, but Georgia's state is, intertwined with the film industry on such a level that it is important to their economy. So this is going to kind of be a big doozy for them. Netflix's chief content officer, Ted Sarandos, had this to say when he heard about abortion legislation in Georgia. Quote, "We have many women working on productions in Georgia whose rights, along with millions of others, will be severely restricted by this law. It's why we will work with the ACLU and others to fight it in court. Given the legislation has not yet been implemented, we'll continue to film there, while also supporting partners and artists who choose not to. Should it ever come into effect, we'd rethink our entire investment in Georgia." Interesting! Furthermore, it seems that there has been a growing sentiment amongst production companies that give you your entertainment, encouraging Hollywood as a whole to move to boycott Georgia. Kristen Wiig, for instance, has stated that she will not be producing her comedy Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar in the state of Georgia, unfortunately for Georgia. Amazon producers have also nixed filming The Power in Georgia. A number of other production companies have since decided to nix that opportunity to film in Georgia as a whole. Interesting. Very interesting. So let me get this straight, production companies. Your big-brained, virtue-signaling idea effort to get the, Georgia state elected legislature to fall in line with your political mindset is to pull all filming opportunities from a state that relies on its filming industry heavily to be economically viable. Do I have that right? Effectively, What you've opted to do in order to solve this moral quandary that you're having about people's rights is cripple a large chunk of the state's economy and put entire industries on the fritz for employment opportunity because you don't agree with what their elected officials have put into law. Interesting. You, large multi-million-dollar companies, would seek to hold a portion of the working population of Georgia State hostage until such a time as you got your way. Do I have that correct? Putting everyone from the hotel industry to the costume design industry, and a good portion of which are, in fact, working-class women who you claim to be defending out of work for an extended period of time. Connect those dots for me, would you? Do I have that correct, Mr. Fancy Schmancy Hollywood man? Interesting. And don't get me wrong, it's not just big old production companies. It's not. It's actors and actresses as well. Take Sophie Turner, for instance, who played Sansa Stark on Game of Thrones, which, coincidentally, was filmed in a little place called Northern Ireland, where abortion laws are the most restrictive of any developed nation, with both the mother and the doctor facing life in prison if they were to commit such an act. Yeah, she's boycotting Georgia because she doesn't like their abortion legislation. Now, she's boycotting Georgia after Game of Thrones has already completed its final season. Interesting. All right. I'll stop being snarky for a little bit, and let's get real. We all know exactly why this legislation has been introduced, don't we? It is intended to be contentious among the parties. It is intended to market pushback. It is also intended to be brought before SCOTUS, because it is intended, in fact, to have Roe v. Wade overturned and effectively return the issue of abortion back to the individual states. And why is this happening now, you may be asking? Because Democrats and Republicans have hyper-focused on this singular issue of abortion. Just abortion. It's not because the Democratic Party, as a whole in general, hashtag not all, actually have a vested interest in addressing women's reproductive rights. Heck no. Because if that were the issue they were concerned with, they'd be out there proposing legislation for safe sex education and contraceptive access on top of all this nonsense. But no one cares about that. And, it's not because the Republican Party, again, as a whole, as in general, hashtag not all, are interested in the well-being of children. Because if that were inherently the case, they would be proposing legislation that facilitated adoption better and bettered our foster care system. Alright? So don't give me that crap. And I get it. I'm gonna get some pushback from people saying, oh, but I do care about the children. I do! Oh my god, they're little babies. Why don't you care? I do care. That's why I'm bringing it up. Alright, my mother was adopted. I could have not existed. It would be very easy, all those years ago, for my grandmother to make that big brain decision to not have my mother. But she did have my mother. And luckily for my mother, she was adopted into a good home. And all that happened and came together to produce me. Alright? So I get it. But I also think that we are addressing the completely wrong aspects of this issue. For some reason, this has turned into a partisan issue that we've decided to narrow in on because it's easy and it's simple and it's divisive enough to get people's blood pumping through their veins and hot. When in fact the solution to your problem is a lot more nuanced than that. What we've lost sight of, me including, is that nuance of this situation. Listen, I know that I have had some very aggressive rhetoric when it comes to abortion, and that pro-life side of me is very hardline and it can be intimidating, but I do think that as a community, as a people, as people who are concerned with the state of our lovely nation, we have lost sight of what actually matters in this. We all want to affect meaningful change that has a good impact on the system, on people's lives. And if we actually want that, if we want to affect meaningful change that reduces, as a whole, the number of abortions in the country, then the solution can't singularly be based on the ethics of when it's okay to off a kid versus the ethics of forcing a woman to conceive a kid, okay? We need to have preemptive intervention being advocated for. And then we need to have ex post facto solutions for when that premeditation fails, alright? Otherwise, we're just gonna continue to have this feedback loop of ugly BS and vitriol and legislation every time. And I'm kind of sick of it, to be quite honest. I'm sorry, but I am. People get ugly, and they get ugly fast. And it's not something that I relish.